Yo, what up YouTube? It's your boy Kylo.kg coming back at it again with another video. In today's video, we're going to be running a how to defeat the fine-tuning argument in 2026. We're going to keep it short and simple here. I'll introduce the person who will be teaching you guys how to run it, Cap.kg. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so my name's Cal.kg. I'm a debater on TikTok and Discord. I mainly blew up on TikTok primarily about a year ago, and then I transferred over to debating on Discord. Today we're going to be going over the fine-tuning argument. We're going to look at several objections to the fine-tuning argument, just the standard objections, and the reasons why I don't think personally they're that good. And then we're going to go into a custom objection that I made, which I think is really good. And I'm going to teach you guys how to run it and how to adequately respond to the fine-tuning argument.
All right. And pretty sure most viewers already know what the fine-tuning argument is, but for those who might not be acquainted with it, or for those who are just researching it, break down what fine-tuning is, what it aims to achieve, and just things of that nature.
Yeah, okay, so the fine-tuning argument is an empirical argument for theism, which uses Bayesian theory of probability. The basic structure, it goes as follows. So basically, you want to say, well, there's a wide range of epistemic possibilities over the constant space, which is just the physical constraints that govern our universe. And then there's a really narrow range of possibilities that is life-permitting. Given that our universe falls within that range, that's way more expected under theism than naturalism, hence it's going to be evidence. The life permitting range is a vanishingly small subset of the total range of values those constants could have in principle have taken. If you shift the cosmological constant by 1 part in 10 to the power of 120, then the universe is going to collapse, or it's going to expand too rapidly for any stable structure to form. And obviously, spatially extended life needs to be stable to form. And so basically, the argument is just going to claim that the probability of the fine tuning, which is the epistemic talk there, given naturalism is really low, and then given theism, it's not. And this is historically a very serious argument. It came from kind of like other types of classical design arguments, like the watchmaker argument, the argument from order Aquinas' teleological design argument. But the modern formulation was sharpened by physicists and philosophers in the latter half of the 20th century. You can look at like Swinburne and Collins or Brandon Carter, John Leslie, etc. And the argument's taken seriously because it's a probabilistic argument where mainly philosophers assigned to use this type of argumentation to analyze confirmation generally. So yeah, they use the Bayesian likelihood principle. And that's just basically what fine tuning is.
And now, when you're in these debate spaces or spaces where they're kind of inquiring on these line of reasonings, what do you see the main objections to be? Go over a little bit over the standard objections that someone might run when they encounter the fine tuning argument, and then after you go over the what objections consist of, kind of break down why you think those objections might not be the best.
Okay, so the first objection is the multiverse objection. Basically, the idea is just that if there exists many universes with varying constants, then just by sheer probability, some of them will be life permitting, and we will find ourselves in one of those. So you can have like a version of multiverse naturalism where the data is equally as expected, and so then you don't get the update in favor of theism using the likelihood principle. Now, the response to this type of objection to fine tuning is called the inverse gambler's fallacy. Basically, the multiverse objection here, it's going to commit the inverse gambler's fallacy, where you want to say that on a basis of like an unlikely outcome of random processes, the process is likely to have occurred many times before. But obviously, that's fallacious, right? Like for example, if I go into a bar and I see someone rolling dice, and I see them roll a pair of fair dice, and it turns up double sixes, you might think, well, they should have did it. They should have rolled the dice a long time, or like a large amount of times, like have a lot of trials to get that. But the idea is just that the probability doesn't actually get raised. Like the probability of you getting double sixes is still going to be 1 in 36. So you can obviously see how this type of reasoning is fallacious. So that's why I don't think the multiverse objection is that good. The second one is the observation selection objection, where you want to say that we should not be surprised to find ourselves in a life-permitting universe because we can only ever be in one. But this objection doesn't actually respond to the argument because it doesn't do any evidential work. It doesn't fully cash out the probabilistic mechanism by which the observation is gonna like be expected given naturalism. Like you can have various counterexamples, like the firing squad intuition, where we do seem to be entitled to draw conclusions from the fact that we survived, even though our survival was a precondition of us noticing it. Um, so the standard objection there can't fully explain why the fine tuning case is different from the firing squad case. Um, but I think this is a really good objection, and that's going to go into the custom objection that I have. And we can look into that.
So before we get into the custom objection, I just like to inquire on how you even reached a level to be able to create your own objection, because you would think like it must take a lot of work for somebody to construct an argument against this highly held philosophical view. When you have people in academia endorsing this view, you would want to say a counter argument to that is when it's difficult. So kind of break down your thought process on why you even wanted to create your own argument. Um, the steps taken to create that argument, and then lead into the argument, what it consists of, and not only that, but how people, the audience, the listeners, can then start writing the argument for themselves, and they know what to look for when they're running the argument.
Okay, so part of the reason why I made this objection is just because once you understand the structure of how certain arguments work, like probabilistic arguments, for example, which the fine tuning argument is probabilistic, once you understand the structure of how it works, you get a better idea of the weak spots and the vulnerabilities in the argument. I came up with this argument because I was reading into the observation selection effect, and I realized that you can just apply it to the fine tuning argument, and it makes the fine tuning argument an argument which is evidentially impotent insofar as there actually is no evidence being presented on the table. Once you get a good idea of the structure and you read and you do a lot of research into the underlying foundations of certain arguments, this is why I say it's really important to look at the meta, because I found this argument by questioning the Bayesian theory of probability in general. And so I think this mainly stemmed from doing a lot of reading into the meta, looking at the underlying structure of the argument, and being able to just combine ideas. So,
Now,
uh,
branching. Oh yeah, I was gonna say just branching into the argument in and of itself. If you could maybe give a step by step guide on. Well, first let's do this. Break down the custom argument, and after you break down what it consists of, run the audience through a step by step guide on how to properly and effectively run the argument.
okay, so the argument is a problem in Bayesian confirmation theory. It arises in the following way. So, standard Bayesian confirmation theory says that piece of evidence confirms the hypothesis just in case the probability of the hypothesis given the evidence is greater than the prior probability of the hypothesis. So that's just to say that it's more expected, given like it's more the evidence is more expect. Well, the probability of the hypothesis given the evidence is greater than the probability of the hypothesis absent the evidence. And equivalently, just in case the probability of the evidence given the hypothesis is greater than the absolute probability of the evidence given your background knowledge. So this is going to be the probabilistic relevance condition for evidence. The evidence must raise the probability of the hypothesis above what it was before. But this generates a problem when you have evidence that you already know with certainty before you even encounter the hypothesis, right? Because if the evidence is already part of your background knowledge, its probability given everything you knew going in is already 1. So then the evidence can't actually raise the probability of the hypothesis, right? Like the probability of the hypothesis given the evidence, if you just calculate it using Bayes' theorem, is going to simply return the prior probability of the hypothesis, right? The evidence there doesn't actually do anything. And so you can apply this objection to fine tuning. Fine tuning either conditionalizes on a statement that's in a biconditional relation with the statement I exist, or it just is the statement I exist, right? Like that is the evidence. Either way, if it's true that I exist and it's in a biconditional relation with that statement, or it is that statement, then the probability of the evidence where the evidence is I exist is equal to 1 because it's obviously true that I exist, and it's entailed. So then the problem just becomes that it doesn't actually do any evidentiary work, right? Because the probability of your existence given your background knowledge is just 1. Now, because obviously you can't doubt that you exist. And so the problem just becomes that fine tuning, like the evidence there doesn't actually do anything. Like it doesn't raise the probability at all, given that the evidence and you exist are biconditionally equivalent. They're true in exactly the same conditions, like they have the same probability in every context. So the fine tuning evidence is certain given the background knowledge. It's epistemically impossible to doubt that you exist. And so I think this is just going to like obviously show that there is no evidence for fine tuning. Like there's no evidence in the sense that there's nothing there that raises the probability of theism.
And for those looking to maybe dig deeper into the concepts needed to employ this argument, could you give them a few starting points where to look at, things of that nature to get people in the right position to start running this type of objection?
Yeah, so this isn't the observation selection objection, though it's really related to it. So you should read into the observation selection objection, which is a problem for Bayesian theory of probability. I think the person who made it was named Clark Glimmer. He wrote a paper on it in the 1980s. So that's a good place to start. And then also you should just look into basic foundations of Bayesian probability theory, like look into the Bayesian likelihood principle. You should also look further into what the fine tuning argument actually says. Like I think a really good way to object to certain arguments is to know what they actually say before you even start to critique it, because once you have an idea of what the argument's actually saying, it becomes way easier to critique the argument. So I would recommend reading into Bayesian fine tuning. And yeah, I think that's a really good place to start.
All right. Look, I mean, you gave the audience what they were looking for, a response to the fine tune argument. If you have anything last to say, maybe plug your socials, tell people where they can find you at, things of that nature, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok at cap.kg. Um, my Discord is the same. And yeah, I think that's about it.
All right. Appreciate your time. Take care.